This is The List of Shadows, written by Beryl Coops.
The rain came down upon Berlin like the judgment of a wrathful god, slanting, unrelenting, turning the streets into rivers of filth and shattered stone. Captain Alistair Vane, of His Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service, stood in the lee of a gutted tenement, the collar of his greatcoat turned high, breath curling white in the damp air. His cracked watch showed 11:30. The girl was late, a whisper in the alleyway, then silence. Vane's fingers twitched toward the Webley at his hip. Thorne's voice lived in his head. Cut ties, burn the trail. You are a blade. But blades, Vane knew, did not dream. And he had dreamed of the look in her eyes when he'd found her in the ruins of St. Michael's, clutching papers that named names, papers that burned. She emerged like a phantom, small, sodden, dark hair plastered to her face, breath hitching. 16, perhaps. The sleeve of her coat was torn and a dark stain spread along the fabric. "They're coming," she gasped. He didn't ask who. He seized her wrist. "Can you run?" A nod, pale as wax but steady. They moved like hunted things through skeletal streets. The air stank of cordite and burning timber. A siren wailed somewhere distant. A whistle cut the night, sharp, deliberate. Vane dragged her into a shattered doorway as boots hammered the cobbles. A torch beam swept the street, lingered on a puddle where they had stood moments before, then slid away. "Checkpoints on all the bridges," she whispered, voice fraying. "They have my description." Of course they did. Orders said, if compromised, exfiltrate immediately, no exceptions. But war was not a ledger. It was blood and choices, and sometimes the right thing wore the face of treason. "There's another way," he said. The sewers hit them like a fist, rot and human filth. The tunnels twisted into black, water sloshed foul around their knees. Lena retched, shuddered, but did not falter. A rat scuttled by, eyes glinting in the narrow cone of Vane's torch. Drip, drip, like a ticking clock. Voices ahead, German. Laughter, the clink of glass. Vane froze, pressing Lena into shadow. A soldier lurched close, reeking of schnapps, humming a vulgar marching tune as he relieved himself against the wall. A few more steps, and a shout echoed farther down the tunnel. The man grunted, buttoned up, staggered away. They waited until the voices swam back into the dark. When they found a rusted grate, Vane wrenched at it until it shrieked and gave. Cold air rushed in, sweet as salvation. He boosted Lena up and hauled himself after. Dawn bled over the spree, sky the colour of sickness, reeds bent in the river wind. A patrol boat drifted downstream, SS uniforms stark against gunmetal water. Lena made a small broken sound. He pressed a knife into her palm. "Run! East, 2 miles. A farmhouse with a red door. Tell them Vane sent you." "And you?" He tried on a smile that cracked his soul. "I'll give them something louder to chase." He sprinted along the bank, shouting in guttural German, drawing the patrol's eyes. Shots rang out. He did not look back. Somewhere a girl ran toward the dawn. That, for the moment, was enough. He vaulted a toppled lamp-post, cut through a gutted factory, climbed a shifting stair and threw himself through an empty window frame. Rain ran through the ribs of twisted girders. In the U-Bahn's mouth, he dropped into a maintenance shaft, found a chained gate, and paid for passage with 2 tight kisses of plastic explosive. The blast slammed the door of the world. He stumbled out into a weed-choked courtyard behind a tenement that had forgotten its front. A slit of yellow opened. A grey-haired woman with a candle studied him like a stray cat. "Inside," she said, "or bleed on someone else's step." "I'm not bleeding," he started, then saw the red blooming at his side, a ricochet's kiss he hadn't felt until the running stopped. "Frau Nobody," she said when he asked her name. "Sit." She boiled water, worked with hard hands and a silence made of years. "Why help me?" he asked. "You ran toward the river," she said. "Only guilty men run away from it. Sit still." She dug the fragment out with a paring knife and a prayer without church. He bit his cheek and tasted iron. She bound him with a clean dishcloth from a future that never came. He dozed in a chair, pain stealing minutes. In that thin sleep he saw Lena's face as he had left it, pupils wide with the idea of hope, knife in her palm, riverlight making her look younger. He woke to a kettle boiling dry. By afternoon the rain softened. He left coins on the table, worthless but ritual mattered. "Go east," she said, as if reading his map. "The west is for men who still believe in maps." He stepped back into the cold. The city exhaled hot tar and grief. He kept to edges, a thin man among thicker shadows. The back alley spat him onto a bomb-scooped street. At the far end, a lorry idled, tarp sagging, engine coughing smoke like an old smoker. The driver read a newspaper with the concentration of a man who could not read. Vane limped close, face empty, collar up. He held out a gloved hand, palm up, the universal request for a lift. The driver looked at the crucifix pinned to Vane's lapel, then at the mud on his boots. He shrugged. "Where?" "East," Vane said. "As far as you're going." "We are all going east," the man muttered. "Climb in." Vane crawled under the tarp and lay among sacks that had once been potatoes and now were promises. The lorry rattled forward. Every bad gear soothed him. Pain became a metronome. He watched canvas seams tick past like slow stars. Do not think of her. Do not think of Thorn. Count instead bolts, knots, breath. The canvas ripped back. A flashlight stabbed him white. "Papier," a young voice said, SS, eager, brittle. Vane sat up. He composed a Berlin face he had worn before. "Lost in the raid," he said, dialect flat, offering a card that would pass a glance and fail a study. The beam slid over his coat, the binding beneath, the tin toy soldier he didn't remember pocketing from the grey-haired woman's shelf. It paused. Moved on. "Out," the boy ordered. "Inspection." They spilled onto wet cobbles. Vane, two glue-smelling labourers, a woman with an infant clutching air. Rain returned in petty needles. Vane watched the sergeant by the hood. Older. Scar tissue. The one who would decide. "Sir," the boy barked, shining the light at the tarp. Blood. Vane looked down. A coin-sized bloom had seeped through his shirt. Neat. Incriminating. The sergeant's eyes found Vane and took their time. His hand settled on his holster like a man warming his fingers at a stove. "Step aside," he said. Vane did. He tasted rain and old iron. The road ran toward a red door that might be real, toward a river that always thought in options. "Name," the sergeant said. Vane considered the aliases laid out in his head like playing cards. He chose the one that cost most to spend. "Alistair Vane," he said in English. "Captain." The world cracked. Hands came. Metal spoke. The lorry exhaled its last heat as they pulled him away. Berlin, which had watched him run and hide and run again, watched him finally stop. They sat him in a white room that feared being moved. A lamp hummed, a table gleamed, a drain waited the way drains do. On a hook, a coat that had once been expensive. The man who wore it touched the lamp's shade as if reassuring himself it was real. "You ran well," he said, in English salted with pebbles. "You always do. It is a profession." "I prefer walking," Vane said. "Less dramatic. I am Sturmbannführer Mettner." No hand offered. "You are Alistair Vane. Progress already." He smiled without teeth. "Who sent you the girl?" "Nobody sends children," Vane said. "They arrive, like weather." "You are wrong." Mettner's tone was almost gentle. "We always send children. We just lie to them about what we are sending." He tipped the lamp so it warmed one side of Vane's face and left the other cool. "Let us trade facts. You are here. The girl is not. Between these there is a list. Important men are, what is your word, disconcerted." He savoured it, as if an orchestra played and the conductor shot himself. Silence. Inventory. "The list is not ours," Mettner went on. "This offends us. We make lists. We own the ink. Imagine our mood when the page is not ours and yet our names are on it." His eyes glinted. "There is a colonel there, a British one, wearing an accent he paid for. Do you know what I like about you English? You betray each other with better manners." Vane watched a moth beat itself to death against a summer porch light in his memory. He wondered if he looked the same from above. "You have a problem," he said. "You need the list to hurt us. You can't show it to many of yours, or you hurt yourselves. You can't burn it without disappointing someone who collects disappointments. So you will ask me where it is. When I don't tell you, you will ask again with breath that smells of effort." Mettner laughed softly. "If we had met at another party, I would have asked you for a cigarette and meant it." He walked behind the chair. "We will not beat you. It is vulgar. It does not work. Gravity works. Time works. We will let you learn how heavy you are. Then we move you. The relief will feel like love. You will tell me anything that smells like love." "Save your romance for men not paid to despise you," Vane said. Mettner laid an envelope on the table. He opened it with the bored grace of a clerk and slid out a photograph. A little girl on church steps, hair in ribbons, mouth open mid-laugh. A priest's hand rested on her head as if to steady the light. "You dream of her," Mettner said. "Not as a lover, as a debt collector. Bring her to me. and I will bring you a boat and a neutral shoreline. Keep your pistol. Point it at the men who sent you to gather fire with bare hands." Vane did not reach for the picture. "What makes you think I trade children? What makes me think you don't?" The first fray in Metna's tone. Honest fatigue. "We have all been in this too long, Captain. Do not ask me to believe you are clean because you pronounce your vowels prettily." He gathered the envelope. "Never mind. Gravity, we wait." They left him with the lamp's hum. The light grew too warm. The room smelled of hot dust. A pale-browed guard brought water. 6 seconds later, he brought a second cup. On purpose. A crack in ritual. Night flattened into day. Sleep came like a thief, left him with ghost geese in winter. On the third cycle, a factory whistle blared and choked. The guard glanced up. The hall panicked in small human ways. The light died. Breakers tripped. Darkness arrived like mercy. The guard shoved into the room, breathing fast, found the lamp's chain, cursed when it failed, and slid the bolt on his side. He turned. His voice was thin, unused. "West Gate," he said, 4 minutes. He held out his hand, palm up. "List." "You're late," Vane said, and almost smiled. "I don't have it." Disbelief, fury, a laugh that had been afraid. "You people," the guard hissed. "Chess on a board that is only fire." "Listen," Vane said, taking the man's wrist, firm, not cruel. "If you see a girl tonight, you turn your face away like a coward. Be heroic later." "Why would I? Because if you try to be brave now, she'll still get past you, and you'll have to live with the lie that you weren't trying to fail." Vane slid into the corridor. Left. Because left smelled like cold air. Down a stair, into a loading bay that remembered horses, a wire fence, a west gate. Beyond it, rails like black straps across a field of broken wagons. 3 minutes. He pressed into the angle of brick and shed. He counted the breaths between a sentry's steps. He asked a city to be kind. The gate shuddered up the span of a hand. A small shape slid beneath. A boy, if you did not look. A girl, if you remembered. Lena. She did not glance his way. She walked like she belonged where her feet went. Only at the shed's shadow did her shoulders drop in relief, shaped like his name. "Don't say it," he murmured. "I wasn't going to," she lied. Vane. Across the yard, they moved in step, backs to the shed, eyes down. Yardmen on a wet night. Nothing to see here. "How many?" Vane breathed. 4, Lena whispered. 2 at the east gates, 1 in the tower, away from his post, and a boy who practices cowardice. "Good. Cowards are reliable." They reached the corner. Beyond it, rails like black straps, broken wagons, a sagging wire fence. The searchlight on the far tower was still dead. The sky hung low, a damp lid. "There," Vane said, at a split in the fence where a wagon had buckled the wire. "Walk. Don't run." They walked, head down, pace steady, German under his breath, local, tired. "Hate this rain. Ruins the leather." "Ruins everything," Lena muttered. They reached the gap. Vane knelt and lifted the wire. Lena slid through, belly to the mud, and turned back to hold it for him with small, unafraid hands. "Stop!" The shout finally found them. The first shot went wide. The second slapped a fence post and spat bees of splinters. Vane forced himself through, dropped into the ditch, rolled, and lay a heartbeat with cold water on his face. "Up!" he hissed, hauling Lena by the wrist. They became one untidy shape and let the mud decide the first steps. The road rose to meet them. "East," Vane said, toward the river. They ran a lane that had eaten its sign. At the corner, a figure stepped from a doorway. Hat low, coat blacker than the night. He didn't look at them, which was how Vane knew he was watching. A key that wasn't a key flashed in the man's right hand. A door without a lock opened a hand's width. They slipped through. The underways, stale damp swallowed them. Stone took their weight without comment. The door shut, and the street's shouts became muffled argument. They moved down rough steps into a narrow passage, old mortar, wet lime, the city's ribs. Somewhere ahead, a wire hummed as power stumbled back to its duties. The sound crawled along the stone like a timid animal. "Who was he?" Lena whispered. "A friend of a friend," Vane said, "or someone who wants to be thought of as one." They turned once, twice. The passage widened into a vaulted run that smelled faintly of candle smoke and machine oil. Drip, drip, regular as a clock. The floor tilted, the air warmed by a degree. "Quiet now," Vane said. "Let the place learn our weight." They passed a grilled opening that gave onto black water. The echo of the river. He felt it pull in his ribs like a tide. Keep left. A faint light grew, not electric, flame. It picked out arch heads, flaking plaster, a painted saint whose face had peeled away. A door waited under the light, old oak, iron strap hinges. It had been opened often recently. The latch wore a new shine. Vane paused, listening. Above, the city remembering its orders. Behind, boots far away. Ahead, a silence with breath in it. He knocked once. The latch lifted from the other side. They stepped into a stone room warmer than the tunnels. Beeswax and solder. A workbench made from a pew. Coils of wire. Tools. And at the centre, a man in black with his sleeves rolled and grease on his wrists. He didn't look up at first. He was soldering a radio's innards back together, patient as a watchmaker. "I'm not hearing confessions," he said. "We're not here to confess," Vane answered. The man glanced up. His voice, when it came, had the clean tone of a bell struck in winter. "Then you must be here to complicate my evening." Lena exhaled, relief and recognition in one breath. The man in black set his iron down and finally looked at them. His eyes were clear and winter cold. "You found the gate," he said to Lena. "Good. Then my message was not wasted." "I remembered," Lena said, touching the brim of the cap he'd given her once already. Recognition eased the tightness in her voice. "You said West Gate. 4 minutes. 3 would have been better," the bishop murmured, but a corner of his mouth lifted. He nodded to Vane. "Captain." "Father." "I am no such thing," he said mildly, wiping solder from his wrist. "But the title keeps certain wolves respectful." His gaze flicked to Lena's blouse. "You carry the weight under your ribs. Give it here." Lena hesitated, then drew out the thin bundle, onion skin paper, wax seals cracked by flight, twine knotted by trembling fingers. The bishop did not read. He counted by touch, by habit, by a farmer's certainty. He slid the packet into a hollow behind a loosened brick near the altar. The brick clicked back into place with the satisfaction of a secret returning to its hole. "Now we can talk without burning our tongues," he said. "Your friend sent word, Captain. A rendezvous at Maltby Bridge. Midnight. A boat." Vane's jaw tightened. "Thorn's hand?" "A hand that signs with his ring," the bishop said, and picked up a small square tin, dull and scuffed. "Signal lamp. Bomber salvage. The youth wanted to make a toy. I insisted otherwise." He tapped the lid. "Your pattern. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short." Vane grimaced. "Childish." "Vane," the bishop agreed. "But reliable. They'll answer with 1 long, 2 short. If they do anything cleverer, walk away." His eyes settled on Vane. "Clever is the enemy of honest in your line of work." "What about your line?" Vane asked. "My line pretends bells still ring," the bishop said. He glanced at Lena again. "You shouldn't have come back for him." "I know," she said softly. "I came anyway." He nodded, almost proud, almost angry. Courage is not an argument with counsel, but it can be a verdict. He pushed a dry coat across the bench to Vane. "Wear this. The rain has learned your shape." Vane slid into the coat, sleeves too short, warmth welcome. "What price for the gate?" he asked. The bishop shrugged. A breaker tripped at an inconvenient moment. A sentry decided to finish a cigarette. A small boy practiced cowardice with great diligence, the sum of this city's moral maths. He turned, more serious. "Listen, there is rot in your house. The list whispers a British colonel who is not what he claims. I do not need the name. You do." Vane's face didn't move, but something behind it did. "I've suspected," he said. "Suspicions don't pass for proof. Proof is overrated," the bishop said. "Consequence is not." He placed the lamp in Vane's palm, then closed Vane's fingers around it like a blessing. "Maltby Bridge, midnight. If the river is kind, it will keep its secrets for an hour." He led them through a side passage to a stair that tasted of candle smoke and damp stone. At the door he paused. "If you are stopped," he told Lena, "you are a boy sent for sugar. If you are believed, you are lucky. If you are not, you must be quieter than luck." Lena nodded. "And you," he said to Vane, "are not a hero. You are a man who carries a lamp from one room to another and refuses to set the house on fire. Do not mistake the two." "I won't," Vane said. They slipped into a narrow lane where rain stitched roofs together. The church's shadow swallowed them. Then the city took over. Toward the bridge, the road to Maltby Bridge was a problem with many answers, most of them bad. Twice they doubled back when boots learned to echo. We scoffed. Once they crossed a courtyard where laundry ropes sagged between blasted walls like a tired proposition. Vane felt the river tug at him even in streets where he couldn't smell it. "Street lamps ahead," Lena whispered. "Alive again." "Then we are alive too." Vane said. Left. They kept to the brick, faces down, moving with the shameless economy of men who belong to the night by necessity. Near the Charité, a lorry idled with its bonnet up, and a soldier swearing at an engine that no longer wished to be a soldier. They drifted past like smoke. By the Tiergarten, the rain thinned to mist. The trees were black veins against a bruised sky. Somewhere a dog barked and regretted it. Somewhere a gramophone played half a bar and died. At last the river's cold breath touched their cheeks. Stone rose ahead, arches, balustrades, a toppled statue staring at the water as if it had dropped its eyes there. Moltke Bridge. They crouched in the statue's shadow. Midnight came in softly, the way conspiracies prefer. The far bank was a strip of lighter dark. The current whispered in a language that never changed. Vane unsnapped the tin. Inside, the lamp's glass bulb was a pearl cupped in metal. He cradled it in both hands, shielding it from the drizzle, and let the pattern walk across the water. 3 short, 2 long, 3 short. Silence. Then a shape separated from the far bank, a boat low, careful, hugging the piers up riverside. No light. A roomer made of wood. "Stay here," Vane said to Lena, voice barely a breath. "If it's wrong, run. Don't wait for me to tell you it's wrong." She nodded, jaw set. The boat's prow kissed stone. The man in it wore a greatcoat silhouette that could make you believe in England from a distance. He didn't speak until the hull settled. "Galahad," he said, quietly. Vane inhaled, a code word cobweb. "Bedivere," he answered, because the play demanded it. The man's smile cracked the dark. "Took you long enough? Get in." Vane didn't move. The river tasted of iron. "What colour is the door?" he asked. The man blinked. "What?" "The door," Vane repeated, steady now. "What colour did we agree on before dawn?" A beat, the smallest stiffness. "Blue," the man said. Vane smiled back, almost kindly. "It's red," he said, and put his hand to Lena's shoulder without looking, already pulling her backward into shadow. The voice in the boat lost its manners. "After them!" Searchlight. Shouts. The river woke to violence. They slid along the pier under the span, where sound lied and light broke into useless shards. A service ladder clung to the stone like an iron spine. "Up," Vane whispered. They climbed. At the top, a rusted door barred the way. Vane set his shoulder, felt the lock protest, then give with a crack that sounded loud enough to wake the river. They spilled onto the bridge's inner deck, girders, cross-bracing, the breath of water in the gaps. Boots thundered above. Searchlight swung, found nothing, swung on. "What now?" Lena breathed. "Now we stop being polite." Vane pulled the last putty-wrapped charge from his pocket, wire coiled like a question. He scanned the joints, the stress lines, the places stone and steel argued. "We'll loosen the span, not all of it, just enough to turn the night into a wall." "Can we do that?" "Probably not," he said, "but we can try." They worked quick and quiet. He thumbed the malleable explosive into hairline cracks along a junction plate and a settling seam near the balustrade. Lena watched the roadway above through a narrow slit, calling out counts in a voice that did not shake. 2 from the south, 1 on the deck, boat below, 3 men. "Good." He laid the last length of wire. "On my mark, we run for the tram wreck across the road. If we fall forward." "Vane," she said, not a question, not a plea, just his name, like a knot tied tight. He squeezed the plunger. The first charge coughed. The second spoke. The third, set deep in the joint, answered with a hard, authoritative crack. Metal shivered, stone shifted, a section of parapet surrendered and crashed into the water. The boat below bobbed wild as the current took offence. Men stumbled on the deck. For a breath, everyone was shorter than their fear. "Go," Vane said. They ran along the inner catwalk, shouldered through the broken door, pelted to the bridge edge and down the service steps, then across the roadway in a low, ugly sprint. The searchlight found the wrong angles and glared at its own confusion. They dove into the tram carcass, roof torn, windows webbed, the smell of scorched enamel and old grease. Vane dragged a warped bench in front of the opening and let the dark wrap them. The bridge groaned. Orders crashed into counter-orders. Somewhere a siren tried to make sense of it and failed. Vane lay flat, chest heaving, listening to the city argue with itself. He could feel Lena's breath against his sleeve. Fast, then slower, then almost steady. After a minute she whispered, "Will they drop the rest?" "No, they'll be too busy proving nothing happened." He turned his head. Street lights snuck through cracked glass and cut her face into planes, eyes bright in the gloom. "You did well." "I walked where you told me to," she said. Then, quieter, "The man in the boat, he said blue." "Which means someone has been reading our mail," Vane murmured, "or writing it." The thought he'd been holding at bay came in cold and clean. The list wasn't only a German problem, it had an English shape inside it. A colonel's outline, a ring's impression. Thorne's voice, crisp as frost. "You are a blade." Lena nudged his arm. "What now?" "Now," he said. "We let everyone tire themselves shouting. When the light changes, we move." They lay still while the night burned off its panic. Boots clattered across the bridge, commands lost their edges, the searchlight grew bored and wandered. The river went back to pretending it forgot. Vane counted. Breaths, footfalls, the slow return of his own balance. Pain became a background noise he could live with. He let the city's rhythm settle into him until it beat like a second pulse. "Soon," he whispered. "Soon," she echoed. Outside, the last echo of falling stone rolled away downriver like a promise breaking. Inside, two hearts learned how to be quiet together. They waited until the shouting on the bridge thinned to grumbling and the searchlight went back to bullying its own reflection. Then Vane touched Lena's sleeve. Now. They slid from the tram carcass and dropped to the shadowed verge. The city had that stunned, post-argument quiet where even rain hesitated. They kept to brick lines and door frames, letting corners do the work. Twice they doubled back when a street decided to grow boots. Once they flattened against a flaking wall while a squad trotted past, faces set in the serious expression of men who had lost the plot but not the orders. "Left," Vane breathed. They cut through a courtyard where laundry ropes sagged like unanswered questions. A stairwell smelled of cabbage and old soap. A woman's radio coughed a half-bar of a march and died. Far off, someone slammed a shutter with the finality of a verdict. "The bishop said 3 streets," Lena whispered. 3, Vane said, and then a door that doesn't admit strangers. The lane narrowed to a throat. At its end a church wall loomed, pocked stone, damp with the night. They skirted the apse and found a little iron gate choked with ivy. It complained when Vane urged it open. He winced at the sound, then dragged Lena through into a scrap of garden that had outlived gardeners. A vestry door waited under a short run of steps, no handle outside. Vane knelt, pressed his fingers under the lowest tread, and found the cold ring he remembered from another life. The step lifted on a hinge with a papery sigh. Behind it, bricks. He tapped the third from the left. Hollow. "Help me," he murmured. Together they eased the false face out. The cavity breathed dust and beeswax. Wine bottles lay in rows like a congregation at rest. Beyond them, the darker hole of a crawl space, no bigger than 2 people who meant it. "In," Vane said. They slid inside, eased the brick back into place, lowered the step, and lay in a darkness so complete the breath felt audible. Stone pressed their backs. Old oak made the air taste of sacraments. For a time there was only the slow sorting of their lungs and the receding thrum of alarm outside. Lena shifted once, careful not to let cloth scrape wood. "Is he?" she began, then stopped. She didn't say Thorne. The name didn't deserve the oxygen. Vane held the words in his mouth before letting them out. "Someone read our signals," he said. "Someone wrote them too." The list said as much without saying it. "Then it wasn't just theirs," she murmured. "It was ours." "Yes." Silence settled again, deeper now. Somewhere under the floor, pipes hummed as if the church were pretending to be alive. Above, a footfall. 2, not searching, familiar, the creak of a door, a whisper of beeswax and solder. "He knows," Lena breathed. "He always did." She was quiet a long time. When she spoke, it was small but steady. "I don't know if I'm brave or only stubborn." "Both," Vane said. "Most courage begins as bad manners." The smallest laugh. Then, after another minute, "When this ends, if it ends, what are you?" He thought of the word Thorne loved. Blade. He thought of the bishop's correction. "A witness," he said, "which is a burden and a beginning." Lena exhaled, a sound like unclenching. "All right." Outside, the bridge and the river went back to their old argument. Inside, the crawl space held 2 hearts and kept them. "Sleep," Vane said. "I'll listen." She did, because exhaustion is a better order than any colonel's. Her breathing slowed. Vane counted a while, bricks, swallows, the fade of sirens, until the numbers softened and his own eyes lowered. They did not dream. They fell forward into that blank, merciful dark that only comes after you've used up all the light you had. They woke to wood moving above them, a step lifted, a breath of beeswax and cool air. The bishop's face appeared in the seam, upside down, pale with the kind of fatigue that turns into humour if you let it. "Breakfast for apostates," he murmured, passing in a wrapped heel of bread and a bottle whose cork protested. "Stay where you are. The city hasn't decided whether to forgive you." Lena ate like someone remembering how. Vane let the bottle warm his hands before he drank. Wine thin as a hymn, but it put colour back in the world. "The bridge?" Vane asked. "Still standing," the bishop said, "which is how it likes to be described. Your fireworks embarrassed the right people and confused the others. There are now committees to establish that nothing happened." "And the list? On its third owner, which means it has learned to run." He tapped the step with 2 fingers, pleased despite himself. "By dusk it will be 4. After that I stop counting." He studied them, first Lena, then Vane, as if gauging what the night had subtracted and what it had added. "The boy with the pale eyebrows who invited you to the west gate has been transferred to a warehouse," he went on. "A promotion of sorts, lighter keys. He will live longer than his courage, which is a decent trade." Vane exhaled. "Good. As for your house," the bishop's tone cooled, "someone sent a summons for you to Moltke using a call sign older than our sins. An hour after the bridge sulked, a separate message arrived, very private, very clean, reminding certain gentlemen that colours matter. Red is not blue." His mouth tilted. "It made a warm room go suddenly cold." "Thorn," Vane said, not as a question. "A name like a gardening accident," the bishop replied dryly. "If he is not the rot, he is its gardener. In your world, that is often worse." Lena's fingers knotted in the bread paper. "What happens to men like that?" "Less than the stories promise, more than they deserve," the bishop said, and let it rest there. He wiped dust from the step. "You cannot stay. There are eyes with nothing better to do." "Train?" Vane said. "Freight," the bishop answered. "Goods yard east of Stettiner, a service gate with a padlock that believes in God more than steel, a coal wagon with a broken slat. It departs when the foreman finishes his cigarette and remembers he forgot his wife's name." He passed down a faded scarf and a flat cap. "For the boy." Lena shoved her hair under the cap and looked exactly like herself, refusing to be recognized. The bishop slid the step shut, then paused with only his eyes in the gap. "When you leave," he said softly, "you are not saved. You are only not yet taken. Do not confuse the two." "We won't," Vane said. Messages without ink. Twilight found the streets softening to ash. They eased from the crawl space, replaced the brick, lowered the step. In the garden the ivy had washed itself clean. They moved through the little iron gate and let the lanes swallow them. The yard was a thicket of rails, wagons hunched like sleeping beasts, lamps hooded against the drizzle. Men in grimy coats argued quietly with ropes. Somewhere a ledger flipped its own pages in boredom. Vane led Lena along the fence to the service gate the bishop had promised. The padlock's shackle was rust with faith. Faith failed. 2 twists of a thin tool and its side open, offended. Inside, the coal scent was heavy and forgiving. They ghosted between wagons until they found the one with the broken slat. Vane slid it aside with fingers that remembered wood. Space yawned, a black, dusty hollow where 2 people who meant it could vanish. "In," he said. They curled into the corner. Coal dust found their mouths and wrote their names on their tongues. The world became wheels and waiting. Down the line, a foreman finished his cigarette. He did not remember his wife's name, but he remembered to spit. Air coughed. Couplings clanked. The yard grumbled into motion. The wagon lurched. Lena grabbed Vane's sleeve and then let go, embarrassed at reflex. He pretended not to notice and kept his palm flat to the floor, feeling the hum, the small true proof of leaving. "Do we tell anyone?" she whispered. "About him?" "Yes," Vane said, "but not with letters." He pictured a rug, a whiskey, a ring-tapping glass. He pictured a very old call sign lighting the wrong faces. There are rooms where a whispered name is louder than a shout. Lena was quiet long enough that he thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, "I don't want to be brave tomorrow." "Then be useful," he said. "It looks the same from a distance and hurts less." She snorted, which was as good as a laugh. The train found its rhythm and made a song out of metal and distance. Coal dust softened the edges of the night. Vane let the motion comb his thoughts. Metner's clean room. The photograph of the laughing girl, the boatman's wrong colour. The bishop's hands nicked and steady. The list, moving like quicksilver through fingers that couldn't hold it, toward a fire that wouldn't advertise its heat. He felt sleep come at last, not the mercy blank of exhaustion, the careful kind that leaves one ear awake. He let it take him until a shift in the wagon's pitch ticked that ear and brought him back. The train had slowed. Not a stop, an inspection. Voices outside, tired, automatic. Lantern light bled through the broken slat and drew a yellow line across Lena's cheek. Still, he breathed. A beam slipped along the wagon's flank, hesitated at the broken slat, moved on. Boots thumped. A stamp thudded paper. The world decided to keep turning. When the wagon surged again, Lena's shoulders dropped. "How many times can we be lucky?" she asked. "As many as we pay for," Vane said. "We're in arrears." The rails began their patient arithmetic again, tallying distance. Beyond the slat, the city thinned to smudged fields, the fields to damp open, the damp to dark. Somewhere behind them, a bridge dreamed of falling and decided against it. Somewhere ahead, a line on a map pretended to be a future. Lena's eyes closed. Vane kept his hand on the floor and counted until the numbers lost interest and left him alone with the hum. Way station dawn came late and grey, as if it had second thoughts. The freight train sighed into a siding where the fields had not yet remembered spring. A man in a flat cap waved a flag like a tired blessing. The wagons clanked to a stop. Vane peered through the broken slat. A hut. A pump. A strip of platform where nobody waited. "Off here," he murmured. They slid from the wagon and hit the cinders light. Coal dust followed them like a rumour. No one shouted. The engine coughed twice and pulled the rest of the train away, taking their scent with it. A lane ran from the siding toward a low line of trees. Wet earth. Birdsong that sounded surprised to still exist. They walked it, heads down, hands empty. At the first bend, a bicycle leaned against a post. The woman beside it wore a scarf and a coat with good pockets. She looked at them and did not look surprised. "Bread?" she asked. "Later," Vane said. She nodded as if he had passed a test and handed Lena a folded paper. "From a man who fixes bells," she said, and pedalled away before the paper could even get warm in Lena's hand. Lena opened it. 3 words in a neat, impatient hand. "Red is red." She smiled without showing teeth. "He reached them," she said. Vane felt something ease under his ribs. He did. They followed the lane to a farmhouse set back from the road, walls the colour of old bone. The door was not red. It was plain wood, oiled against the weather. A child's chalk sun had been scuffed across the threshold and half washed away by rain. A woman with flour on her hands answered their knock. She stepped aside without asking names. Heat met them, and the smell of yeast and coffee in a stove that had seen worse winters. "You can warm, and then you can decide," she said. 1 hour, no more." They sat at the table, cups, bread, the sound of a clock with an honest tick. Lena ate in small, careful bites. Vane wrapped his hands around the cup and let the heat argue with the night still lodged in his bones. "What do we decide?" Lena asked at last. "Where weight goes," he said. "Your weight, mine." She touched the flat cap brim, then set it aside. "I don't want to run for the sake of running." "Good," he said. "Then don't." The witness. When the hour was almost gone, Vane pulled off his cracked watch and set it on the table between them. The glass was spidered, the hands stubborn at half past something that no longer mattered. "For luck?" she asked, half a smile. "For time," he said, "so you remember it can be used and not only endured." She slid the watch into her palm and held it there as if testing its warmth. "And you?" "I have a room to walk into," he said, "where rugs are older than mercy. I won't bring a list, I'll bring a question and stand there until someone fails to answer it." "Thorne," she said, finally giving the name air. "Or the man behind his coat," Vane said. "Every coat has one." Lena considered that and nodded once. "Then I'll go to the bishop," she said. "Carry messages, faces, not paper. I can be a boy for as long as I need to be." "That will help," he said. "And one day you can stop being a boy and make someone else learn how to look again." Her mouth twitched. "I think I already started." They stood. The woman with flour on her hands handed them 2 apples and a warning look. "The road forgets slowly," she said. "Step lightly." Outside, the sky was still undecided. Fields lay flat and honest. Far off, a river went on being itself, with or without witnesses. At the gate they paused, because some moments require it. "I owed you the river," Vane said. "You owed me nothing." You gave me the knife, Lena said, and touched the hidden sheath at her sleeve. Keep yours sharp. Just don't forget what it's for. I won't. He hesitated. If anyone asks your name, they won't hear it, she said, and the answer satisfied them both. They went different ways at the crossroads, not because they wished to, but because the work divided that way. Lena took the path toward the chapel spire that had lost its bell. Vane turned toward the road that led back to rooms with carpets and soft voices. He walked until the farmhouse was a square, then a dot, then a story even he might not believe. The lane met a broader road. A lorry passed, empty, the driver staring at the middle distance as if the future might be lurking there. Vane raised his collar, set his shoulders, and kept to the verge. Rain began again, uncertain at first, then committed. What remains in Berlin? A bridge sulked and held. A photograph lay on a table in a clean room and made a certain officer uneasy when no one was watching him. In a sacristy wall, papers cooled by degrees as they forgot the heat of their making. Somewhere, men invented committees to prove their courage without moving anything heavy. The bishop soldered another radio. He burned a note over a candle and watched the smoke write the only report that mattered. Frau Adler fed hens and secrets and didn't run out of either. A boy with pale eyebrows counted crates in a warehouse and tried not to think about gates. Colonel Thorne, gardener or rote, stood by a window in his warm room and touched a ring that had misjudged the colour of a door. The whiskey on the table did not get warmer when he looked at it. On a siding by a thin stand of trees, 2 apples sat on a windowsill to keep the house honest. Vane walked. He let the road lift and fall under him, let the rain measure him, let the questions find their weight. He was not a blade, not any more, not only. He was the man who carried a lamp from one room to the next and refused to set the house on fire. He was the man who would knock and wait and say a single colour and listen to the answer and know what it meant when the answer was wrong. By noon the rain eased to a fretful memory. By evening he would be in a city that liked to pretend it forgot him. There would be a rug. There would be a whiskey. There would be a name that sounded like gardening and a silence that sounded like guilt. For now there was a road and the simple, heavy fact of still being alive. He set his pace to that and did not look back.
This was The List of Shadows, written by Barrel Coops. I hope you enjoyed my short story. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. I have written over 500 short stories over the years under many pen names. I will be updating these and recording them under the Barrel Coops name. I will be listing them on YouTube as fast as we can get them recorded. They will include historical drama, humor, adventure, romance, period drama, mystery, thriller, war stories, spy stories, revenge, horror, psychological horror, dystopian, disaster, children's stories, love stories, and more. Too many to name. Something for everyone. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up. It helps others find my channel. Until next time, thank you for listening to the end.